Just go for it. Okay. Good morning, church. Just so thankful to be here with you guys today, and very thankful for our guests that came a long way to be here with us. This is Heath Stapleton from Brown Trail School of Preaching, and he's one of the teachers there and a big manager there and a big part of that system. And just super glad to have him here, and he's going to give a little presentation for all of us. And thank you.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to be here with you all today. We got here Thursday night real late. I've been, going to town a little bit before we head back home. We're going to leave today after worship. Our daughter supposed to start school tomorrow, so, that's not going to work. I don't think she's going to mind missing a couple days. But anyhow, we're grateful to be here. And yes, I represent the Brown Trail School of Preaching. I am the director of development there. And what that means is I control all the business aspect. And I do a lot of traveling, recruiting, and things like that. So we've been on a recruiting trip since school closed in the middle of December. And we've been to Kentucky, Indiana, and we swung up this way. So we'll be headed home, and I think my wife will be glad to get home. She's been sick pretty much the entire trip. So she's feeling a little better now. And then she fell and broke her arm in Kentucky. So as soon as we get back, we got doctors and this and that, and then we're off to New Orleans for next weekend. And I think it's going to be warmer down there. Rumor has it, but we'll see. I'll let you know, I guess. But so anyhow, we're here, as you all know. Tanner plans on attending the school starting in June, and it's a 2-year program, and he'll be with us. So during Bible class, we'll just explain what goes on at the school. That way you know where he's going. And our hope is he'll come for 2 years, and just like the 2 Hoosiers we signed up, he'll come back north, or I guess west, as far as you are concerned, and be part of the work of the Lord's church in this area. Now, the schools of preaching in the Brotherhood, they exist for 3 primary reasons. The first is economics. And what I mean by that is, if you want to get preacher training, prior to schools of preaching, you had to go to one of our universities. And if you know anything about our universities, they're private, and private universities have private costs. And there's only a handful of them now. Most of them closed due to finances over the years. Matter of fact, I started at Ohio Valley College in Parkersburg, West Virginia, which was one of our schools. It shut down in May. The West Virginia Educational Board shut it down because they didn't have enough money to pay their teachers any longer. So to go to these schools, my sister-in-law, she is the secretary to the provost at Freed-Hardeman. It's $45,000 to $52,000 a year, room and board for a Bible major. So you do that 4 years, then you come out owing $160,000, $200,000. And we all know with the student loan companies, they want their money back in 10 years. And that's just impossible for them to go to a small congregation, work full-time, make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and have to pay 20, 25 of that back to the student loan company. That's just so. The schools of preaching, the way we operate is we raise money from congregations and individuals. People chip in $25 a month, $50 a month or so. And from that, it pays all of our costs. It pays for a few salaries that we have, the bills and so forth. That way they don't have to pay tuition. And what they raise is their living support. That way when they leave, they don't owe any money whatsoever, and they can afford to go to a smaller congregation and to serve, and not to have a large salary. So that's one of the reasons why the schools of preaching exist. Secondly, they're known for their soundness, meaning we keep to the book, typically speaking, for most of them. In the colleges these days, our Bible departments, I don't know if you want to call them that any longer. It's quite unfortunate. And so if you go to a school of preaching, you're going to study every book of the Bible, most of them verse by verse. The longer books, maybe paragraph by paragraph. But, I mentioned yesterday, I teach Jeremiah Lamentations, and I get through that verse by verse. So, it just depends on the book. But we're known for our soundness. We're known for being conservative, loving the Word and sticking to it. And also the schools like Brown Trail are technical training schools. And what I mean by that is we teach them more than just the Bible. We teach them how to preach. They have 6, 7 homiletics classes, which will just teach them how to preach, how to teach classes, how to do funerals, weddings. We'll teach them how to do radio, TV. We even built a podcast room. And I say we, my wife and I. We built a podcast room here a year or so ago, and we're going to start teaching them how to do those types of things because, the country is moving away from the media we are accustomed to. So we teach them old school media and new school media to help them in their ministries. So we have a lot of technical training. They will go door to door from time to time. They will go to gospel meetings from time to time, lectureships and so forth, to give them the training that they need to prepare them the best we can. Now our current leadership, there's only 4 of us that are full-time. And I'm going to try this. Every time I touch my laser pointer, it goes crazy on me for some reason. But there I am. I was the director of finance. I've been a director of about a bunch of things at the school there. I've been there a long time. For a while, I was the director of the school, and I just didn't want it any longer. There's a lot of politics in the church, especially in the directorship of schools. And I had a couple kids at home, and I didn't want to put my kids through that. So I told the elders there, I said, if the Lord wills for me to direct the school preaching again someday, I will, but right now, I really don't want to. I'll handle the money part. So I handled the money, I handled all the business aspect. Beside me is Pat McIntosh, and I tell you, every time I hit that thing, I'm going to have to buy me a new one, or bust it one. Pat is the the academic dean. He graduated from the school in the mid to late 80s, and he's gone on and got a PhD in Bible, and he's working on a second one right now. But he's taught at Bear Valley, Amridge, Heritage over the years at several other institutions. And beside him is our new director, Kevin Rhodes. I call him new, he's been there about 4 years now. And Kevin and his father both were involved in schools of preaching throughout the Brotherhood, and he's very intellectual, scholarly, has written several books and so forth, and he's doing a great job. And then beside him is Willie Alvarigo. We have a Spanish department as well. And we're the only school of preaching in America that has a Spanish program, a 2-year Spanish program. And, we all know why. Whether they come to America legally or illegally, we owe them the gospel. And as they are being converted, first generation Americans, even our ancestors, most of them didn't know English. And once you're over 30, you're not about to learn a new language, It's not that easy. So they start their own congregations, and typically their kids and grandkids, they integrate with us in our congregations, but as far as their first generation congregations. So Willie is the Spanish director. And then beside him is Jesus. We call him Jesse as well. But Willie is originally from El Salvador. Came to America in the 90s. And Jesse is originally from Mexico, and he just got his citizenship a couple months ago. So he's very grateful to receive that. He's very proud of it. And anyhow, he has a different background. He was raised in the streets and so forth, and came to Christ, and of course, Christ can change your life. And then all the way to the end is Roy Gafford. Roy is our new Dean of Students. He's been with us about 4 years as well. And then, there's myself. I'm originally from Northeast Ohio. So Tanner likes to talk about the cold up here. Like, well, we know a little bit about the cold. We're not too far from Buffalo, and we all know the type of snow Buffalo gets. And we get that lake effect snow and that wind all of the time. It never stops. So anyhow, I'm originally from there. But my dad, when I turned 12, decided to do mission work. And we moved to Tanzania, East Africa. So we have been in and out of Tanzania ever since. Me and my brothers, We both have lived there as children and adults. And I used to be able to say I've spent most of my life there, but now I'm getting a little older. I can't say that anymore. I've been there a long time. Since we were raised there as kids, me and my siblings, we all speak Swahili. The internet thing we know got big in the 90s, so I bought the Canisa La Cristo site, Church of Christ. I got the Canisa La Catholici, the Canisa La Baptisti. I bought the Mashahidi Jehovah, Jehovah's Witnesses, and a couple others. So anytime any of them go to their sites, guess what they get? Yeah, so we get a lot of converts that way, and I get a lot of ugly emails from time to time. But it's not my fault they were not smart enough to buy their own website. So I control all of those, and glad to do so. So we're back in Texas. We came to Texas full time in 2008. That's when we came to America full time. And I did meet my wife in Indiana. That's why that's up there. Dad came back for a couple years to preach. And me and my siblings, my brothers, we all met our wives at the same congregation. And we all moved back to Africa. And so that's part of our work, part of our legacy, I guess. But I've directed schools of preaching, and I've taught at them since 1996. So I've been doing this a long time. It's nothing I went to college for. I didn't plan it. It's just one of those things that happen, and I'm grateful that it just happened, and glad to do so. Now here's most of our instructors. Not all of them are there. And since we are in the DFW area, there are 600 congregations of the Lord's Church in the DFW area. But that means we got everything from what they call the hills, which is instrumental, and your smoke shows, and your band, and your Saturday communion, and all that, all the way to your one-cuppers, who are non-institutional, non-located preachers, and things like that, and everything in between. So there may be 600, but it doesn't mean we associate with 600, if you know what I mean. But we have several that see eye to eye with us doctrinally. And what we'll do is we'll ask their elders if their preachers can come and teach a class or two every year. You see, we only have 4 men that are full-time on staff. That's myself, Kevin, Jesse, and Willie. And the other 2 there are part-time. And these other guys will come and teach a class or 2 a year. Most of them will teach it for free. And we appreciate it. So they all chip in. We keep our costs down, and we give them a great education. And I really like the fact that we have so many instructors. And the reason for that is because we all can turn to John 3:16, and we'll all teach it truthfully, but we'll come at it from so many different angles. So, when I teach from a missions background. We have others that were, like Roy was a school superintendent in Wichita Falls for a while. He has very broad education. He has a master's in cardiac recovery, a master's in Christian ministry. We like to say, if you come to Brown Trail, we'll take care of your heart and soul. So, we come from different angles, and it's very beneficial, I think, for the students. But those here that have a date and year behind their name, they're graduates of the school themselves. And they just all do a wonderful job. And I would love to talk about each and every one of them, but we just don't have time to do so. My brother-in-law, JJ, see, every time I hit that thing, JJ, there we go. He teaches at the school as well. Now, he just teaches one class now, Bible geography, but he just started a new preaching job in Azle, Texas. You know where that's at. That's Fort Worth area. He started it today. And he's married to my sister. She's the baby of the family. So we don't like JJ much. I don't know what gave him a right to think he could marry our baby sister. Anyhow, he thought he had that right. But they're doing good. They got 5 kids. And yeah. But he's a very big personality person. He walks into the room and just takes over the room. And so he does a wonderful job in the pulpit, but don't ever tell him I said so.
That's a guarantee.
But anyhow, let's see, we got Marco Arroyo. He's from LA. He was converted when he was 15. Willie went to do a gospel meeting there. And prior to that, Marco was Pentecostal. And he went to the gospel meeting with one of his running buddies, and he was converted. And when he graduated high school, the high school is 6,000, by the way, he decided to come our way. And he's our youngest instructor. He's just amazing, has an amazing mind, an amazing ability to open up scripture. So we're grateful to have him. And beside him is Obed Rodriguez, and Obed passed away with COVID 2 Novembers ago. And then his wife followed 2 weeks later. And his mother followed that next March, and his dad followed that June. All of them with COVID. And we left a 21-year-old, and a couple churches in East Texas took her in, and they're paying for her education, for her living expenses, you know, to help them out, because she literally lost everyone in 7 months. Now here's some of our student body, and you know, they represent America well. You can see we have white, black, and Spanish-speaking students, and they come from all over the United States, and from all different backgrounds and all different ages. And you know, that makes for an interesting class from time to time when all that happens. And no one told me when I was supposed to stop, by the way. 10:30?
15.
10:15? Okay, I can do that. So anyhow, we'll just share a little bit from some of these guys. We got, man, I'm going to have to get me a new one. This guy right there, Ronnie Fisher Jr., he's from Wisconsin. And his dad is in the white suit. He didn't get the memo, dark suit, but whatever. But you can see Ronnie suffers with albinism. And most people that suffer with that are legally blind. They're totally blind. But he always wanted to be a preacher. So his dad retired from nursing at 62, brought him down our way to drive him around, you know, the city and help him with his papers and so forth. And anyhow, Ronnie is a great gospel preacher. He's one of those, you're not going to fall asleep. Since he can't read, you know, unless it's Braille or whatever, he'll march down the pew, and when it's time for someone to read a verse, he'll call on the closest man. So you have to pay attention. If you don't pay attention, you're going to be embarrassed in worship. You don't want that. But behind him, the redhead, I really don't want to hit this thing anymore, but I can't step in front of it. The redhead, Michael Wyndham, he was a judge in McKinney, Texas. A lawyer and a judge, and he decided to get off the bench and to preach. We have Joe Nimick. He is highly educated. He taught at the University in San Francisco and at the University of Louisville there in Kentucky. He also coached basketball. And if you know anything about basketball and remember Denny Crum from Louisville, he was on Denny Crum's bench. So he came our way at 62 when he retired, and he's preaching for a church in Paris, Texas right now. So we have all these different types of backgrounds. You know, we even got a horse thief and a cattle thief up there in the 2017 picture.
They didn't hang you.
Yeah, they did not. That was in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, yeah, they'll probably about like up here. You get caught doing that, you're lucky to survive. So we've got everything from the legal system. We've got the thief to the judge and a couple cops as well, all in the same class together. And you know, it all just works. You look at the 12 apostles, you know, they were a wild bunch of characters themselves, some of them. So then in the 2020 class, we just graduated them, you know, a couple years ago. We have Leonard Graves. Leonard's 43, 44, never been married, never really dated. He's finally got a girlfriend from California. And he highly educated. He worked for Enron before Enron went bust. Don't blame him though. And now he works for Halliburton, and he preaches on the side, but he's a recruiter for Halliburton. So he travels the world poaching employees for Halliburton. That's his job. A wonderful preacher. The man beside him in a red sweater, Scott Dykowski. He was raised a Baptist. And we met him popping into a congregation in Dublin, Texas to give a presentation. We met him there. And 6 months later, he called and said he wanted to preach. And so, it's a good group of guys. Now, here's some of our most recent graduates. We have Keaton Schrum to the left. He was a cop in Tulsa, Oklahoma, by the way. I don't think he was the one that arrested Dale. But anyhow, Keaton, he worked the Oklahoma City bombings, if you remember that. And he was the ranch manager for the governor of Oklahoma before he came our way. And I remember about a year and a half ago, we were in class, I was teaching, and his phone rang. And I always make the joke, you know, unless it's Jesus, hang it up. And he said, well, it's the governor's son. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you talk to him. You know, that doesn't happen every day. So anyhow, he's working in Arkansas right now. And I'll tell you this, please don't put it on Facebook. He was just diagnosed with congestive heart failure last week. He hasn't told everyone yet. He's going to put it out when he's ready, but figure you all don't know him. So you can keep him in your prayers. He doesn't know how severe it is yet, but he's only 41. And I don't know, it's a sad deal. And he just started that preaching job, but he's at a very loving congregation. And I know it'll all work out. Then we have Jason Adair beside him. Jason's now preaching in Comanche, Texas. And these two gentlemen, Jose Espinoza and Victor Luna. Jose got COVID bad, and he has diabetes. And you know, COVID's weird. It attacked his feet. And they had him on bed rest for 2 quarters. And there was a threat of amputation because of it all. And he got well just in time to walk across the stage. But he's preaching at the Spanish congregation in Comanche. And Victor's from Cancun. We went back to Cancun. And part of my job is going to visit, you know, our graduates from time to time, pop in and see them. Yeah. So that's going to be happening. Now here's some of our current students right now. They all come from different backgrounds and so forth, and some have unfortunately dropped out since then. But we are the only school in the Brotherhood that has Faith Hill. And we're not talking about the country singer, but we're talking about right there. She's attending with her brother, Tyler, and she came to find a husband. That's what she came, and she did. You'll all like this. Her husband's name is going to be Joseph Smith. So, whatever. He's the one right beside her brother, and I know my thing's not working right. But it's an interesting group of guys. You can see we got the old man, as he's called by some. He's 62 years old, and he was converted 5-6 years ago from the Baptist denomination, and always wanted to preach. And his wife got cancer, and she died. Oh. And she told him before she died, she's like, you need to go do it. So he's with us right now. We have Jared Hammond in the back, and Chris Ward. Jared, the one with the hair, he's 40 now. Chris is almost 40. And all the way to the right, we have Andrew Patterson. His mother's Egyptian, and father is American. And Andrew, very smart kid. He went to Texas A&M at 16. And graduated with his first degree at 18. He's 25 now. And he once, with his education in international studies, he came to get some Bible, and his hopes are to go work with the State Department in Egypt. That way he can serve as a /missionary. So that's his hopes right now. And let's see, the one in the tie is Cody Martin. Cody's 29. He finally got a girlfriend. Saw it yesterday. He's girlfriend official. And he was not raised in the church, and during college he was taking some philosophy classes. So he's like, well, let me check this Christianity stuff out. And he went and attended a Seagoville Church of Christ, and they converted him, and he wants to preach. The kid in the white shirt who didn't get the memo as well, Michael Oliver, was raised Catholic, and he worked for the city in Louisville, Texas. And that's just north of Dallas, or yeah, somewhere up there. And they had a water leak. So he went to go work on a water leak, and a Spanish gentleman came to work with him, and he was a member of the church, and he was converted. So a busted water line is what helped bring him to Christ. So you just never know when doors are open for us. And so he's wanting to preach also. So anyhow, that's some of our group right now. Here's our Spanish group. We have Nelson Hernandez, Oscar Alas, John Paul Fallis, the guy in the brown suit or brown jacket. He is from Costa Rica. He'll be going home to Costa Rica when he graduates. He's itty bitty tiny guy. I think we got him on a step right there to bring him up with everyone else. But he's one of those big personality people. just loves everybody, always smiling, always hugging. And, you know, sometimes that makes me sick, but whatever. He's never had a bad day, doesn't understand bad days, you know, just one of those. And, but, you know, he's very genuine, loving and caring as well. And I know he'll do a great job when he goes back to Costa Rica. I want to pass my clipboard around. I do an email newsletter every month. Start right here, right? And I send it out to those, you know, interested. It's usually 1,000 words, 700 words, just a little update of what's going on. And if you'd like to receive that, just put your email address on there, write it real neat, please, and I'll add you to the list. And that way you can follow what's going on with us, and maybe I might write something nice about Tanner every now and then. He's going to have to earn it, right?
Yeah.
Now here's some of our incoming students. Yeah, I don't know about that one in the middle yet, but we'll figure it out. But we have Davin Watley to the left. I need to put his new picture up. Unfortunately, his fiance just left him. And, you know, it is what it is. But he called me 2-3 weeks ago, all heartbroken about it. And I'm like, it'll be all right. You know, there are other fish in the sea, right? Yeah. So, but he's 22, I believe. And he's finishing some education right now. And then there's Tanner and his fiance as well, and they'll be with us shortly. And then we have Robert and Cash Oren. Robert is 48, so he'll be the old man in the class. And his son Cash, all the way to the end, he's graduating college in May, and he'll be one of the younger men in the class. So they're from Arkansas. Robert has preached in congregations, if you will, for about 9 years now, but he's never been trained, and he's, you know, concerned about that. He says he wants to be the best he can be, so he's coming our way for that purpose. And then we have Norfleet. We found him in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We were there a couple Sundays ago with them. It was colder there in Fort Wayne than it is here, by the way. Just throw that out there for y'all. And his wife is Ashley, is standing, beside him. Let's see, in the middle there. And then his daughter, to his right, she's going to attend as well. She's going to take some classes, you know, alongside her father. So we're grateful for them. I told Tanner yesterday, this morning, he's from the Summit City congregation there, and they're going to miss him. We were there 5 minutes before we realized he does everything. Him and his son. His son, he led a prayer, he did a scripture reading, and led some of the singing. And then Norfleet does a lot of the preaching there, so they're really going to miss that family when they come our way. Then we have Hayden Baker. He looks 15, but I think he's 18. He's a Brown Trail all the way. He was born at Brown Trail, raised at Brown Trail, and now we're going to train him there. And he does a good job. And then we have Quantrell Turner. He's 37. He's coming as well. He is a Purdue undergrad, and then he did his master's work at Ball State, I think, there in Indiana. And he's in finance, has done well for himself. And when I started talking to him about raising funds, he's like, nah, I don't need to raise any money. So he's done really good for himself since he's got out of school. And he's married, got 3 little daughters, and we'll appreciate having him. He serves as an associate preacher where he's at right now. Now, our Spanish department, they're the only 2-year program in America. We've graduated, I think, 56 now since that program started. All the graduates preach in Georgia, Texas, Arkansas, Mexico, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and one's in Tennessee right now. So I need to update that. And all of the current students in the Spanish department, as soon as they come in, there's a congregation for them. So they're preaching the entire time they're in school. And now as far as our schooling is concerned, we have 72 separate courses at Brown Trail. And to put that, to compare that to college real quick, that's about 2,400 classroom hours. That's someone with a master's degree will sit in classrooms that long. And You know, if you go get a bachelor's, master's in Bible like I did, I went the college route, every state's a little different, but typically 120 to 128 credit hours to get a degree. And typically 90 hours pertain to your degree, which is 30 classes. So someone with a bachelor's in Bible has 30 Bible-related classes. Not just Bible, but Bible-related. You know, they'll have Hebrew and Greek and maybe Latin, geography, this and that. So someone with a bachelor's in Bible, they have not got all the books of the Bible. If so, they're on overview levels. And if you go into a master's, that's another 20 classes. So someone with a master's degree will have about 50 classes. So we offer 72. And they're fast paced. We start every day at 8, end at 3:30, and they go home with hours of homework. They have papers to write, sermon outlines to make. They have, you know, not much time for themselves. Let's put it
Don't
that way.
unsell Tanner while you're here.
But our thoughts are this: if you can't handle a school of preaching, you're not going to handle a pulpit. So that's our thoughts. So we really stick it to them. But you know, it's worked for us for a long time, and we'll continue with it. But here's some of the courses we have. Myself, I teach the history classes, intertestamental, church and restoration history. We're going to have a restoration tour after they're at school. You know, we're part of what we call the restoration movement. And it's just not a movement, but a collection of movements where a bunch of people wanted to return to the Bible, right? And we know most of those movements united in what's called the Ohio Valley. So we'll start in Nashville, visit a few things there, go up to central Kentucky, in the Ohio Valley there, and then end up in the West Virginia Panhandle, where the Campbells built their college and so forth. So, yeah, we have those classes. Then we have, you know, homiletics, how to make your lessons, hermeneutics, how to divide scripture, critical thinking classes, and so forth. So these are some of the classes they'll take, and I know they'll enjoy them. We also have this MTSM program. This is a one-year program for kids right out of school that may just want to get some Bible. Not that they'll be preachers or preachers' wives, but, you know, to give them a foundation for the rest of their lives. And Norfleet's daughter will be taking that, and we typically have one or two in that program. That's the program Faith Hill was in when she came our way. Now, as far as the school, you know, we have a proven track record. We started in '65, and we are the second oldest school preaching in the brotherhood. But we are the oldest English department in the brotherhood. Sunset's older than us. But Sunset started as a Spanish school preaching, and then they cut their Spanish department and went English only. So we've been doing this since '65. We've graduated hundreds of students over the years, and these are the states that they're preaching in full time right now. Hopefully soon I can light up Washington, right? And they do mission work. They're pulpit preachers, youth ministers, they're elders and deacons, and they just do a wonderful job, and we appreciate each and every one of them. But our very first graduate, Dane Carter, is the very first one to walk across the stage. You see, when we started the school, we had 4 men that started, or let's say 4 men that graduated. One was from Queens, New York. Let's see. 2 were from Texas and 1 from Oklahoma. So the first 3 now are in their 80s. And one of them just retired from preaching in New Mexico. He was at a congregation for 40 years. And he just retired. And they called me, and they're like, Heath, you know, do you have one for the next 40 years? And that's what I did. I laughed at him. You know, that just doesn't happen. And then Dan Carter, though, the very first one, he just took a new preaching position. He's 82. And he's preaching in Stephenville, Texas, a congregation called Morgan Mill. And that's, I don't know, kind of central west Texas. Not really west Texas, but getting there. And so he just took that job. And his wife passed away 4 or 5 years ago down in the Killeen area, Temple. And he didn't want to leave her, you know, per se, but he wanted to preach more. So, you know, he left her buried there, and they'll be reunited one day soon. But he's up there preaching. I asked him the other day, I said, are you ever going to retire? He said, no. He said, I'm going to die in the pulpit. So that's his desire, is to shock an entire congregation. I guess if he does, they can just roll straight to the funeral. So, I don't know. But that's his desire. But that's what our guys do. We train them to preach, and that's what they do. We've trained men that have gone on to work at Memphis School of Preaching, Bear Valley, Southwest. They teach at Freed Hardman, Harding. They write many journals, websites, books, debates, and so forth. They work with TV programs, like Give Me the Bible, Gospel Broadcast Network, radio shows. They direct church camps. And they've preached in at least 50 different countries. And a lot of our graduates do a lot of work establishing schools of preaching around the world. And the reason behind that is this. When we moved to Tanzania in 83, 84, we just finished war with Uganda. And some of y'all may remember that, Idi Amin. I call him Idiot Amin. But Idi Amin decided he wanted just to slaughter Tanzania for some odd reason. And it bankrupted the country. So anytime we found a young Timothy, someone full of potential, like Tanner, we would send them to the Memphis School of Preaching, and guess what? They never came home. And you know what? I don't blame them. When Dad and Mom moved us to Tanzania, I remember we were in Northeast Ohio. I was 12, playing ball and all that stuff. Dad walked into the room. He said, we're moving to Tanzania. And I said, have fun. But we couldn't buy anything. They had to go to Zambia or Malawi, other countries, just to buy flour and sugar. And we were afforded the opportunity to do so because we had a car and money. So we moved there during a time of a famine, severe famine. The country was bankrupt. And they did come crawling to America in '86 asking for money. And we gave them money on the condition that they become a democracy. So they gave up their socialism to become a democracy then, and so we fed them. And now they're doing good. You can buy iPhones in Tanzania. They're very expensive, much more so than here. But so to solve that problem, we started to build schools of preaching in their nations, to train them there. That way they don't have that temptation. We spend tens of thousands of dollars to bring them to America underneath, the plan of them going home, and they don't. So this solves the problem. And so we've established our graduates about 20 schools of preaching throughout the world. We also do a lot of gospel meetings. I've already mentioned I'm somewhere different every Sunday, and a lot of time it's for gospel meetings. And I was near Bloomington, Indiana, where IU is, Indiana University, like the basketball capital of the world, or used to be until they got rid of Bobby Knight, but that's another lesson. We were right there last Sunday, here this Sunday, be in New Orleans next Sunday, and half the time I don't know where we're going until I decide to look at my date book. And, my wife's like, where are we going on Wednesday? I don't know. I'll let you know Friday. So we travel a lot. In our area, we supply student preachers to fill in. So Tanner will be doing that when he's there. We typically send them out every weekend somewhere. We get calls from congregations. I got 2 calls yesterday at 8 o'clock. Both of their preachers were sick, and they're like, can you help us? I'm like, sure. So I just sit down with my phone, send a bunch of text messages out until I find someone, right? So they'll always have opportunities to preach. If you go to our website, and this is about to change, browntrailschoolofpreaching.com, we have a media section. We have over 3,000 radio sermons you can listen to on it. Most of those were by my father. We have about 500 sets of old class notes on our website that you can download for your own personal study or to help you teach class and so forth. But we're about to separate all that. We're in the process, or our web host is, in the process of building browntraillibrary.com. So we're going to put all the library stuff on that site and keep our site for, school information. And here's some of our graduates. We have Joe Moon and Elizabeth. They came down 4 or 5 years ago. That's how I knew I was getting old. I knew Joe in diapers. I baptized Joe and taught him and trained him. And now they've got 3 kids and 1 in the womb. 3 little boys and a little girl on the way. And, but they met a few years ago in Indiana. She got her education at Freed Hardeman, and she works with orphanages, children's homes. And they met there, and they're a wonderful couple. Nathan Boyd's from Texas, Missouri. His dad was a preacher. He used to preach outside of Kansas City, and I think he's in Blue Springs right now. Blue Spring, up near the Kansas City area. Then we have Cody McCoy. He's 26, 27, and he's been preaching at a congregation called Emory for 5, 6 years now. So ways to help the school, we're always ready to support, but here's something. If you use Amazon, you know, there's another site called Amazon Smile. It's the same site, it's a different address. That is their charitable site, and you can pick us as your charity, and a small portion of what you purchase will come our way. We get about $100 a month from them. So it's the same site, same business, same everything. You got Amazon.com or Amazon Smile. And we've got enough brethren that are in that. And Kroger does the same thing. It's called Kroger Charity. I don't know if there's any Krogers around here or not, but they do the same thing. And they give you a little card, and when you're ringing out, they scan the card, and a small portion will come our way. And we get a couple $100 a month from Kroger, believe it or not. That's pretty neat that they do that. So some parting thoughts. If a preacher shortage exists, and it does, if our nation's in decline, it is, and if our brotherhood is divided, we need to continue to reach the world and teach people the truth and love. And that's our motto. You know, there's a lot of preachers out there that have a lot of truth, but they wouldn't know love if it hit them. And a lot of them that have a lot of love, but they wouldn't know truth if Jesus was pointing at it. So we appreciate y'all. I know it's a bittersweet thing when you lose a young family to go study, and the hopes are they'll come back north, west. I'm not in Indiana any longer. And, you know, work with the churches up here. I know there's a dire need for preachers up in this part of the country, as in other parts as well. And Lord willing, we'll be solving a little bit of that. But one thing I want to mention is this. You know, I mentioned to you Dan Carter. We have several that graduated in the 60s still preaching. And an investment in these men and in schools like this right now is an investment in our future. I mean, Dan and several others that graduated in the 60s still preaching, they've been preaching for 6, 7 decades now. You know, you can do the math. I have to take my shoes off to do the math, but you know, you can do the math. And what that means is this: these young men that are graduating right now, you know, we got 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, zeros, 10s, 20s, that's 8 decades. So if they're around that long, we're going to have the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Some of these guys, if this earth is still here, will be preaching into the 2080s and 2090s. And that's, you know, we're worried about our country. We're worried about the church, the future of it. What are we leaving behind for our children and grandchildren? Well, through schools like this and training like that, we're leaving 80-year-old tanners behind. And who will be still preaching the gospel with their kids and grandkids running around their ankles. And that's our hope, right? Well, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
What was the women program?
Yeah, we have a women's program. Eventually it's going to be online. It's not online now. But all the wives are required to attend it. And it's on Monday. So what we teach them basically is some fundamentals from God's Word, how to teach children's classes, do ladies' days and things like that. But mainly how to be a preacher's wife and survive. You know, you're in a glass house. You know, just any position like that, whether you're a politician or, you know, a preacher, and people are always watching and judging you, and some men can't hack it, and they go to schools of preaching assuming they can, and some women can't hack it. All of my brothers preach, and brother-in-law, but I have one brother, Jason, his wife just couldn't do it any longer. And she's like, either you get out of the pulpit or I'm gone. And they have 4 little kids at home. And, you know, the judgments, so, not every congregation's that way, but some are. You know, Dad moved back from Tanzania my junior year of high school. And we moved to a small town in Indiana. We were 3 6'6" boys moving into small town India, and they thought they hit the jackpot as far as their basketball team were concerned. But we were the top of town. Everything we did was multiplied, and by the time we were graduated, we all were drug dealers and felons and all that, and, you know, we were just, yeah, we never did any of that stuff, but, and then the mother has to go through all that. And it's difficult on some. But every congregation's different. There are some congregations we've been to where they're just as loving and as kind as can be, and others that will sit up there and just judge the preacher's tie. Did you see that knot he used? And how dare he go with the full Windsor? Doesn't he know that's, you know, and things like that. And it's sad that, but it happens in some places. And some of you are nodding up and down. You know what I'm talking about. So that's what the women's program is about. It's like, I don't know, get them ready. And we hope that they all end up in a loving congregation, though, and never have to deal with that nonsense.
What's your website?
Brown Trail School of Preaching.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the new one's going to be Brown Trail Library.
Okay.
Let me get that done. All right. Well, we appreciate being here. I know y'all talked about us driving a long way. I like to drive. I hated when we drove through that last pass the other day that was dark and I didn't get to see it, but I'll get to see it today. And hopefully I'll keep the car on the road. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.